What is up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Dense Pixels podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brad, joined by my co-host this week, Carrie.
What's up?
The news is all bad, is what's up. I am so sorry to deliver another depressing week of news where the news is like 90% awful. And you know, this and look forward don't usually have a lot in common, but this week it's going to have a lot in common because I'm going to begin both shows with me getting really upset about lots of stuff. So we've been doing a segment on the show here lately called This Week in Layoffs, since it seems like we're having layoffs every single week in the games industry.
Every week.
This past week was especially bad, and I'm really upset
like
about it.
Two of the biggest companies getting in on it at once, which is...
So the small stuff, so 505 Games, developers of, or publishers of a lot of stuff, closed offices in 3 different countries. No word, about 30% of their workforce is being laid off. No words on how many people that will be. Star Citizen, those guys, that fucking scam that's allegedly going to be a video game, they laid off a bunch of folks because they re-implemented a return to office edict, because those are so popular. And for people that decided not to return, or for select people that decided not to return, they just eliminated the positions. A lot more going on there, because some former employees have mentioned that the work environment there is highly toxic, and it's all bad news. But again, what do you expect from a project that exists just to siphon money from the suckers? Deck 9, the developers of the Life is Strange True Colors and the Telltale Expanse game, they lost 20% of their staff last week. Mm-hmm. And then we get to the big boys, 2 people, and this is where the crux of my anger comes into play, because we have seen over the past several months, because layoffs have become so prevalent, and because the only person or people in corporate America who matter to these companies are the shareholders. We are seeing companies cut workforces that do not need to cut workforces. Like, you can make the argument that Microsoft cutting 9% of their staff in the wake of the Activision Blizzard acquisition, while a shitty thing to do, you can see where it might make some sense.
Right. You can see the argument of, hey, we finished this huge merger.
Right.
There are naturally going to be redundancies when you have these 2 big companies being merged together, and this, whatever it was, 6% or whatever the hell it was, was a result of eliminating these redundancies, and, trying to keep as many people as possible, or whatever the hell they said. And ultimately, a certain amount of people, it just didn't make sense, right, for them to have multiples of people that would ultimately just be doing the same job. Yep. But with these 2, it doesn't make that sense.
They're shitty for 2 completely different reasons. So the first one, of course, PlayStation. Sony cutting 8%, or not Sony, sorry, the PlayStation division specifically, right, cutting 8% of their workforce. That's about 900 jobs that are being lost.
Yeah.
And that includes the entire London studio being closed.
Yeah.
That includes cuts
Insomniac.
Cuts
at Insomniac,
have been wildly
Naughty
successful.
Dog, and Guerrilla.
Right.
Like, wildly successful in-house studios for Sony being impacted. They said they will also be impacted by a reduction in workforce, which basically means layoffs are happening there as well. So the company-wide email that went out stated that there will be a headcount reduction of about 900 people, or about 8% of the current workforce. The layoffs will impact employees across all Sony Interactive Entertainment regions. Several PlayStation studios will be affected. On top of that, PlayStation London will close in its entirety, Fire Sprite Studios will see reduction, and there will be reductions in various functions across Sony Interactive Entertainment in the UK. Yeah, this sucks. Because
Yeah.
this isn't being brought on by some massive financial losses by them in the last quarter or even within the last year. This isn't being brought on by, again, a big merger like what happened at Microsoft, where those layoffs, as much as they sucked, are kind of like of the to be expected variety, right? This is just Sony being like, well, we made a lot of money, but we didn't make all the money.
Yeah. Let's
So,
make the
like, the
bottom
numbers,
line look even better than it already
it's
is.
this and EA. I mean, the layoffs happening in the industry in general are a result of the capitalistic infinite growth mentality, that the numbers always have to be going up, and that even if you're still really in the clear and are super stable and everything's in the black, doesn't fucking matter. If the numbers didn't go up, they didn't go up, and it's time to make those
Yeah.
numbers go up.
Remember how last year was a fucking catastrophe and a bloodletting, the likes of which we've never seen in the games industry? We've already exceeded the number of layoffs in the games industry
From
this
last year,
from last year.
and it's March.
And it's March. Right. And
I think the total number is something along the lines of like 7,800 people in total now in the games industry this year. And again, it is March 4th. Like, it's barely been 2 months.
And by the way, Jim Ryan, Sony, who's gone in a couple weeks, like basically got to, I mean, like I said, he fucking laid his hammer down and then he's like, deuces, I'm going to enjoy my golden parachute as I jump out of this airplane with the millions of dollars that I'm sure I will be able to retire with, because I've decided to move on. There's a really shitty instance going around of literally a week before these layoffs happened. He visited the Sony London studio because, like, on his farewell tour, because that's kind of like where he got his start. It's where he was based when he first started. And literally 5 days later, that whole studio was closed. Yeah.
Yep.
Like, there's a picture of him posing with the studio staff, big smile on his face, everyone's all happy. And again, like, he knew at that moment in time.
Right, exactly. This wasn't a decision that, these are not decisions that are made the night before the emails go out. These are made like months in advance normally. So,
and again, like, Insomniac, who is just bringing in the big bucks, bringing in the fucking the fucking money. They have to cut staff? Really? Like, the studio that's just, like, made banger after banger, selling millions of copies, literally some of the most critically acclaimed and commercially successful games that you've put out in the last several years. Insomniac needs to cut staff. Naughty Dog needs to cut staff. Guerrilla Games, Horizon needs to cut staff. Like, really? Those guys need to cut staff? Pretty sure those guys are who you want to be investing more money in. But again, like, because we are in a state where this is just the status quo now, and because other companies are doing it, you're getting pressure from your shareholders to do it too, so that you can make your bottom line, your books look even better. This is the normality of it. My only hope is that we see a slowdown of this after the first quarter, once everyone's financials for the year for 2023 are reported, and people can calm the fuck down a little bit. But who knows? I mean, this could be a constant thing. Now let's talk about EA, because EA pisses me off for an entirely different reason. They're laying off 670 employees, which is about 5% of their staff. Here's why the EA one pisses me off, because as part of this, Andrew Wilson, CEO, said that EA is going to be, quote, streamlining its company operation, sunsetting games, and moving away from the development of future licensed IP that we do not believe will be successful in our changing industry. I need to remind everybody that a couple of years ago, EA strategically decided, you know what? developing new IP constantly and having like have a pretty mixed
New
hit
ideas
rate.
are hard.
Yeah, new ideas are tough.
Ideas good.
Licensed ideas are easy. Like we'll just license someone else's property and make it, and that'll be great.
And that's why for a while they had the Star Wars rights exclusively.
Right. And now they're like, oh, you know what? Licensed games are just too hard. New IP and capitalizing on our successful brands is where it's at. It's going to shock nobody to learn that the guy who was in charge during both of these strategic points is the same guy. Somehow, the dude who makes the decision prior, the wrong decision, that was a bad move for the company, which wasn't because, again, to your point, like the Jedi series has been incredibly successful and they've been doing fine. Same guy's like, oh, you know what? That was the wrong way to go. Let's shift gears here. Of course, he suffers no penalty. He's not out on his ass. He's not taking a reduction in salary. Instead, he gets tens of millions of dollars annually in bonuses. And now, 670 people lost their jobs. A first-person Star Wars game that Respawn had been working on is now scrapped. Yep. Because they want Respawn to just focus on Apex Legends and the third Jedi series game. There's other IP titles still in the canon. We don't know what's going to happen there. They opened a new studio who were working on a single-player Battlefield game, Ridgeline Games. That studio is now closed. They never put out a game. That studio literally exists for 2 years, and that's it. And meanwhile, like EA's like, you know what's really successful? Like, you know what EA, the best move they made? They're like, man, you know what? Fucking not having to pay FIFA for that license turned out to be a really excellent move because that's $100 million that we're not having to pay out. Look at all this money we're making. Let's just fucking double down. But again, nothing happens to Andrew Wilson. Nothing happens to the people, the board, the folks that allowed him to take this course of action. No, they're all fine, but 670 people have to find work in an industry where those opportunities are going to be harder to come by, more and more, just because of the amount of people that like the amount of jobs that are out there far do not live up to the amount of employees that are able to take those jobs on. And so again, we've talked about this before. You're going to continue to see talent leave the industry. You're going to continue to see a brain drain, and when you need to expand again, which is inevitable because these things are cyclical. Yep. It'd be really cool if they could just figure out how to run at the right size all the time, and this will expand again.
Asking a lot.
Yeah. I'm gonna dip into the post office real quick because Johnny asked a question. He said, with all the firings, downsizing, and shutting down of studios, would you consider us heading into a second gaming crash, or are we already in one?
So that's I think a fundamental misunderstanding of what caused the first gaming crash. So if you are a small child and you are unfamiliar with the gaming crash of the mid 80s, that was largely driven by sort of overexpansion of the industry at large, right? Where video games were new, like they had only been around for a few years, and every single department store needed to have their own console with their own games. So you had all these shitty little clones and knockoffs and whatnot flooding stores, and a complete lack of quality control as far as like actual game software was concerned, right? And so accordingly, consumers lost faith in the product and they stopped buying. And so the amount of money being made in video games in the mid 80s basically stopped until Nintendo came along in, I guess, 86 in America, 86, 87. And sort of, with the actual quality control that they had and all of that stuff, sort of rebuilt faith in the video game industry. Whereas what is happening now is not being driven by consumers at all. It's being driven by the people at the top of the food chain. So there's not really a lack of consumer faith in video games right now. If anything, video games as a medium, as an industry, should be stronger than ever in terms of the consumer end of things, right? So I think...
And by the way, if you look at a multi-year plane, it is stronger than ever.
Yeah.
Like the reason that this shit is happening, to Carrie's point, is because this fallacy of number go up always somehow still exists in
Yeah.
every industry, not just the games industry.
Right.
And we saw, of course, we saw a COVID boom, just like a lot of other industries did, especially industries that are hyper focused on people staying indoors and not
Right.
going out and doing stuff. And the games industry was one of those industries, had a COVID boom. And there's the expected contraction that happens after that in revenue. If you as a company didn't have that baked in and weren't prepared for that to happen, then guess what? Your executive leadership has failed you. And maybe instead of firing all these people who are just, like going to the mines every day and doing the work, why don't you get people that actually can strategize long term? Because if
Yeah.
you sat there and sat there in 2020 and 2021 and were like, man, this fucking wave is never gonna crest. Like, we're just gonna keep riding this shit into the fucking stratosphere. And that's the story that your investors were sold. That's a dereliction of duty. That's their fault. That's not the fault of the people making the games. That's the fault of the people who were telling you that story.
Right.
And that's the problem.
Yeah. So no, I don't think we're going to head into a second gaming crash. I don't think we're in one currently. I think we're in a different flavor of problem currently. But ultimately, from a consumer standpoint, video games are stronger than they've ever been. Games are still selling like they haven't been before. So the simple answer is no. But the more complex answer, of course, is just like it's a very different situation than what caused the first gaming crash in the mid 80s, which really just goes to oversaturation in the market, complete lack of quality control, and essentially growing pains for the video game industry. Whereas, now things are pretty well consolidated. You've got 3, let's say 4, including PC, major consoles. 3 companies sort of running the show as far as console distribution and publishing is concerned, and the quality of games these days is obviously as good as they've ever been. So yeah, it's a very different flavor of problem that we're having right now in the games industry.
And I
But
think you
at
might
the end of the day, I guess you could say both are just caused by capitalism.
Yeah.
So.
I think if you see anything, you might see a slowdown in the like AAA space, perhaps, just because those resources are the ones being cut. Indie is booming right now. Like, indie games continue to ride high because those are the folks that are really making the majority of really interesting games out there right now. So I think that's going to continue to thrive. What's been interesting is I feel like, and I swear to God, this is not recency bias just because I'm now in this marketplace, but I feel like I'm seeing more companies shift a lot into the PC market. I feel like the PC market is growing. I mean, the PC market was already the biggest market in gaming, but I feel like that a lot of those like walled gardens are starting to open up specifically to PC now. Obviously, Microsoft is hand in glove with the PC space. Sony is starting to release stuff in the PC space, and even with Helldivers, you have day and date releases in the PC space, which, based on the success of that, I would expect them to keep doing that where it makes sense going forward. So we'll see what happens there. But like I said, just a fucking brutal week.
A real shitter of a week
across the industry. So we will take a short break and come back with better news on the other side. All right, Carrie. So talk to me about one of the like when we saw the logo for this game, it was literally one of the most confusing titles that I've ever seen in my entire life. This new Pokemon Legends game that is coming out later this year. Or no, actually, possibly not later this year. Possibly.
No, I think they specifically said it's going to launch in 2025. Yeah, so I mean, that was the big sort of reveal for the Pokemon Presents for Pokemon Day this year. Was that they're doing another Pokemon Legends game. And surprise, it's not in Johto like everyone sort of thought it was going to be. And also we didn't get the Gen 5 remakes that people had really sort of hyped themselves up for. And to be fair, that the official Pokemon Twitter account kind of teased about, because they were posting GIFs like with no comment of like the legendaries from Black and White. Just like in the week leading up to the Pokemon Presents, which everyone I think fairly assumed was alluding to a Gen 5 remake, and then they were like, nah bitch, we're going right into Gen 6. So it's going to be basically it looks like it's going to be entirely in Lumiose City, which was like the sort of like the big central hub of the Kalos region, which itself is based on metropolitan France. And it looks like the whole game will take place in the one city, which I'm kind of intrigued by. Obviously, you know, we've had other big games recently take place entirely within one city. Final Fantasy VII Remake only takes place in Midgar. The Spider-Man games only take place in New York City.
Okay, come on.
Look,
New York has 5 boroughs. Come on, like
right,
there's
but like the
places
first
to
game
go.
You didn't go to fucking Staten Island in either.
I mean, nobody should. To be fair,
no, Staten Island sucks. I've got cousins that live there. But like, you know, let's be reasonable here. There are many instances of games that only take place within like one large city that still manage to feel big and compelling and whatnot. So not much is known about it. It's called Pokemon Legends ZA.
Is it Z2A?
It's Z-A. Okay. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think any clarification has been offered on how that's actually supposed to be said. If it's ZA, if it's Zeta Alpha, if it's Z2A, whatever. It's Legend ZA right now in my brain. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about it. All we got was a teaser trailer, and they said that it's coming out in 2025. I hope they take the amount of time on this kind of project that it really deserves. I also have to imagine this might end up being a launch title for whatever the next Switch system is. That would be my guess. With this would be a day one launch with whatever the sequel to the Switch ends up being. So, look, I've got 7 or 8 Pokemon tattoos at this point. I'm obviously going to fucking buy it.
Are you disappointing that they're straying from? I guess it's not fair to call it a formula because there's only been one of them. But are you disappointed that they're not revisiting the gameplay that they had in Arceus?
Well, I mean, there's nothing to suggest that the core gameplay loop itself would be different, in spite of the fact that this would be in an urban environment rather than like a big open field. I'm for as much as I love Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Legends Arceus, I'm really stoked on having like a first party Nintendo game take place in like a big city rather than like out in the wilderness. Like, I love a wilderness game. I want something different. So I'm sure you'll get the same sort of like core catching and battle mechanics of the first Legends game. I'm curious as to how they're going to play into the lore of Kalos. I think Gen 6 had some really interesting lore. I'm curious also as to like when specifically this is going to take place in the overall sort of like history. Obviously, Legends Arceus took place in the way far ancient past, but this being in a city, I have to imagine it's going to be really contemporary. So lot of questions that I'm not going to have any sort of answers for probably 6 months at least. But yeah, I'm stoked that this is the direction they're going in. I think they've learned. I like to hope they have learned a lot of lessons from what wasn't good about Arceus and what wasn't good about Scarlet and Violet. Because while both of those releases have so much good about them, you know, particularly on the performance end, Scarlet and Violet really suffered. I think because it was really trying to do too much on the hardware that was available for it. So, assuming, right, that this is likely going to be a launch title on whatever the next system is, I think this could really be a big step forward for the franchise and for Game Freak. So
Cool. Anything else on what else they showed during that Pokemon Presents?
I'm fucked as far as the Pokemon trading card game
Mm-hmm.
pocket thing. Like, I feel like that's long overdue. I guess I'm surprised that they hadn't done that yet, where they're like, oh, the trading card game, which has been around for 26 years at this point, they're finally just doing a mobile app for it. So yeah, once that's available, I'll be playing the shit out of that. I've gotten back into collecting Pokemon cards recently. It's a very expensive
Yeah, I
downfall
know.
for me
I used to
personally.
play MTG back in the day. I stopped because it's very expensive. So
Yeah, that Scarlet and Violet 151 set has had me in a fucking chokehold ever since they announced it. So, it's fine. I'm fine. If it's like my
stop collecting things that are exorbitantly expensive. Like I don't collect things. Do I collect anything anymore? Not really. Not really, but like I try to keep the stuff that I buy incessantly to like a manageable level, and not something where it's just a consistent escalation. Because between this and your retro games and your vinyls, like you're just
look.
gonna be taken out of house and home. Like you're living in literally the most expensive state in the nation now.
Look, it's true, and I live in fucking Pee Wee's Playhouse, as you can see if you're watching this on YouTube. But yeah, look, it'll be a good way for me to experience the trading card game without having to go to my local game store and spend money on boosters.
That's
So
true. It's true.
so other than that, it's like there are updates coming to like all the other mobile games like Pokemon Sleep and Pokemon Go, and actually the Pokemon Presents got me to start playing Pokemon Masters again, which was it's like their gacha game, right? And I played a bit of it right when that first released a few years ago, and I stopped because I lost interest. And then they were like, "Oh, here's your favorite character, and he's totally dripped out now." And I was like, "Okay, no, I'm back in. You got me with my boy Silver." So I've been starting up on that again. Haven't spent any money. Very good about not spending my money on stupid gacha pulls and whatnot. But yeah, it's fun. For what it is, I think the gameplay is pretty compelling. It looks good on the phone. So that's about it. As far as a Pokemon Presents is concerned, I think it was a little underwhelming overall,
Hmm.
but I appreciated the swerve that the Pokemon Company did by teasing the fuck out of Gen 5 and then being like, haha, bitch, Gen 6. So,
It wasn't the only bit of Nintendo news this week. So this one had a whirlwind pace to it. This story. So last week, Nintendo sued. Let's see, what's the company's
Yuzu.
name? Well, Yuzu is
Um,
the emulator. I don't remember who the company is that runs it, but basically Yuzu is the premier Nintendo Switch emulator that's out there on the market right now. And the reason that Nintendo is deciding to go after them,
I believe it's Citra Team.
no, well, Citra Team is the one who works on it. Who's the damn
Okay,
company?
whatever.
Tropic
Regardless,
Tropic is the name of the company. So they're going after this because unlike most emulators, so most retro game emulators are based off of essentially reverse engineering
hmm
how the console works and rebuilding it in a virtual space, which is completely legal. Like nothing wrong with that. Yuzu unfortunately needs to go an extra step further there because Nintendo Switch games have like copy protection software in
hmm
them that you have to circumvent in order to play them on an emulator, and that's part of what the Yuzu emulator did. Now, Nintendo obviously upset about this. Nintendo, of course, also an incredibly litigious company. I did not appreciate the won't somebody think about the children response
Oh
in their
yeah.
filing, saying, and this I'm quoting from the lawsuit filing, the prevalence of piracy of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom in the days leading up to its release, in large part through emulators such as Yuzu, harmed law-abiding Nintendo customers too. For example, Many fans of The Legend of Zelda were forced to avoid social media to prevent seeing spoilers and preserve their surprise and delight for the actual game release.
Uh-huh.
Woe is the poor Nintendo
Whoa.
fan who had to stay off of Twitter for a couple of days to not see shit
Right.
leak out. So we were expecting this to be potentially protracted, but actually earlier today,
They settled real quick.
yeah, they settled super fast. So the Tropic Haze is going to pay Nintendo $2.4 million in damages, and they are also going to they agreed on a permanent injunction, which means that they have to take down not only Yuzu but also Citra, which is a 3DS emulator that the
Hmm.
same company developed. I thought their statement was also very funny because their statement was basically, when we made Yuzu, like, we never thought that pirates would come and emulate games on the Nintendo Switch. Like, we thought only legal people who own the games would emulate their games on this, which is very funny to think about. Someone actually being like, oh, not the pirates. The pirates won't use this. Only the good law, upstanding citizens of the world. I go again.
So,
I go again to the post office. Mad Coco G says, thoughts on folks constantly fucking around with Nintendo and being shocked when they find out.
so I think what's being sort of lost in the discussion about Yuzu and Citra is the fact that like this was probably brought on by the fact that the developers started locking these things behind a paywall on Patreon
Mm-hmm.
instead of just keeping it open source like so many other emulators have been, right? But no, basically these people decided they were going to make money off of this,
Mm-hmm.
and that's likely what was the impetus for Nintendo to make a move on this. Um, so it put the emulator in more of like a really muddy legal territory because suddenly there was, money involved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so now it's like, okay, well, now these people are essentially profiting off of piracy, which is kind of fucked, right? Like I don't necessarily agree with Nintendo you know, suing these people for that much money. But at the end of the day, it's like you shouldn't have put it behind a paywall, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like that should have never been a thing. Um,
Well,
and
it's
so
sort of
I struggle to have a ton of sympathy for people who tried to basically pull a fast one and make a ton of money on a Patreon that they were basically selling this emulator.
I mean, but at the
But
same time, them making money on this is it's essentially the video game legal equivalent of guns don't kill people, people kill people. Like, it's not the emulator that's doing the crime; it's the people
right,
pirating the games that are doing doing the
right,
crime. Not
right.
that I like raising that example in defense, in any sort
Yeah,
of defense, because I don't agree with that sentiment.
yeah.
But at the
And
same
like
time,
what's so funny about this, right, is like, they announced that they were taking it down and all this other shit, but like the message that was posted in their Discord was Yuzu and its team have always been against piracy. We started the projects in good faith out of passion for Nintendo. We were not intending to cause harm. We've been deeply disappointed when people used our software to leak game content prior to its release. We cannot allow this to occur. Piracy was never our intention. Effective today, we will be pulling our code offline, discontinuing our Patreon accounts, and shutting down the websites. And it's just like,
real. Look, we're all looking for the guy who did this energy.
right, exactly, exactly. Extremely, we're all looking for the guy that did this kind of shit.
Oh my goodness.
It's just like it's the lack of taking responsibility for what you are actually doing. Like, no, you were absolutely encouraging piracy. That's what emulators naturally do. Um,
Do you think that this portends bad news for the rest of the emulation scene in the retro space
I
specifically?
don't think so, because I think, you know, if they were going to do it in the retro space, they probably wouldn't have done it a long time ago. And at least to my knowledge, now this all being said with the fact that I do not emulate a ton of stuff. I've got like a Game Boy Advance emulator on my computer so that I can stream Golden Sun, but also I've bought Golden Sun multiple times across multiple releases. Um I think it's what made this different is the fact that the dev team, the creators of this software, decided that they were going to profit off of it by putting it behind a Patreon paywall. So I think that was them basically getting a little too big for their britches, right? And thinking that they could get away with this, and it just wasn't going to happen. And ultimately, here's the thing, people are quick to point the finger at Nintendo, but I think the same thing, I think Microsoft and Sony would have done exactly the same thing if someone was putting a fucking PS5 emulator behind a paywall too, right? But the fact of the matter is, this is, I believe, the only instance that we can see of emulator devs deciding like, oh no, you have to pay us for this, instead of it being open source like the vast majority of other emulating software.
Well, I think certain versions of it were released to open source. I think it's only like the most recent builds, because I have Yuzu on my Steam Deck.
Okay.
And that game, I got that from EmuDeck. So I think the other thing is that there's a lot, like, emulation is kind of like the, like, hey, like, how do you emulate these games? And like, you're like, hey, you a cop? Like what the fuck? Like, people kind of
Right.
keep it on the DL. But I think with Yuzu especially, there's so many people that were just like using Yuzu and were just like, hey, look at me, I'm playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom at 4K 60 FPS. Like, aren't
Right.
I fucking awesome? And shit like that. So I agree with you. I don't think that there's a slippery slope argument here. I think that the fact that Yuzu is emulating a currently on the market console, and to your point, profiting from it, is why Nintendo probably pointed their laser at them. And again, I think if Nintendo were to go after like a retro emulator, I think that you would see perhaps this drawn out a little bit more in a legal battle, instead of just settling a couple days after
Yeah,
the
I
suit
feel
was
like
filed.
there's more of an argument to be made in favor of retro emulation. Um just because I think the precedent is there really to defend such things. But I think it's really hard to have a legal defense against an emulator for a current generation console that people were charging money for. Like,
Yeah.
that's really what it boils down to at the end of the day, is objectively speaking, they fucked around and they found out. Like,
Yep. I I,
yep.
I agree totally. So let us take another quick break, and then I'm going to tell you about this new hot game that all the kids are talking about. So, Carrie, you know me. I
Yep.
like to stay up to date with the new hotness in the games industry,
Sure.
and so as a result of that, I'm finally playing this new game from this little indie developer called Valve,
Uh-huh.
called Half-Life. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I sure have. It's just
Um,
a little indie game, not
yeah,
influential at
it
all.
kind of flies under the radar. You might
Yeah.
not have heard of it. So, no, Half-Life's real good, guys. Took me 25 years to find that one out, but
That's really
yeah,
funny. Good for you.
turns out it's as good as all the kids are saying it is. For those who don't know, Half-Life is a very famed FPS, the game that put Valve on the map as a company. You could argue it was the game that advanced the genre forward in the post-Doom era of the late 90s, and really defined what FPSs could be,
Mhm.
past that. And it's interesting playing this game for the first time now, in the context of knowing how the FPS landscape has kind of developed, because two things are really stark to me in playing Half-Life. The first is that you're constantly doing shit in this game. Like, there really isn't downtime. Like, you're always moving from one thing to the next. There's always enemies to fight or puzzles to solve, and things of that nature. And but it's still paced well. Like, it doesn't feel like it's trying to cram too much of you. But you're just like there's no time to just kind of sit there and watch a 5-minute cutscene play out before you. Like, everything that you're doing in the game is completely diegetic. Like, you're interacting with stuff that's in the game world. And it's funny how a lot of developers nowadays have strayed from that, a lot of stuff. And that kind of brings me to the second point, is that because you're constantly doing things, and because you're not watching pre-rendered cutscenes constantly, you're always getting to do the cool things. Like instead of watching it happen in a pre-rendered video that's happening in front of you. And that's really neat. And I really wish that more developers maybe could take a look back at what made games like Half-Life really successful and apply some of those lessons into modern games. Because as cool as the cinematic moments are in FPSs, it's even more cool actually doing the thing yourself. So I'm having a good time. I fired it up the other day, and 3 hours just kind of evaporated in the blink of an eye. That's
Nice.
that sign of a good game is when, you're just like, you're playing and you're like, oh man, like what time is it? And you're like, oh shit, it's 3 hours later. Like what the fuck just happened? So it's cool. Like I said, I'm enjoying it. Can't wait to see the second one. The only thing I don't like is that the way that Gordon Freeman controls in the game is a little flighty, as you would expect from a game that's 25 years old at this point. And there's a lot of first-person platforming going on in Half-Life.
That's always rough.
Yeah, which leads to a couple of I have to restart this part 5 times because I keep dying because I don't have the precision control that's needed to get past it.
I mean, there's a certain level of jank that is going to be naturally in a game that's that old.
Yep.
And yeah, first-person platforming in your first-person shooter is exactly the flavor of jank for 1999. So
yes, and I'm excited too because I also, when it was on sale a couple months ago, I also bought Black Mesa, which is a fan project remake of the original Half-Life. So I'm excited to check that out after I play this as well, just to kind of see what the revamp is. So yeah, Half-Life, guys, if you haven't played it, maybe you should probably do that at some point. It's like super cheap on Steam all the time. So
speaking of things that are cheap on Steam that have been around for a minute that I have gotten back into, just want to briefly bring up Stardew Valley. I've gotten back into Stardew in a co-op campaign with one of my friends back east. It is a lovely way to spend a couple hours on a weekend catching up with one of my longtime friends. But I do also want to bring up the fact that the 1.6 update, which is going to add new festivals, new events, all that sort of stuff, just a wealth of new content for free, that now has a release date. So that's coming out in just a couple weeks on March 19th, if you're playing on PC. And then for people who are only playing it on console or mobile, that'll happen later. If you're one of the sad sacks of shit who have only played Stardew on mobile, apparently a lot of bug fixes are going to be coming to the mobile version of the game as well. So just small update. Stardew Valley rips. Concerned Ape is basically saying like he's never really going to close the book on working on Stardew, even though he's got Haunted Chocolatier that he's also working on. So yeah, Stardew Valley's really good, and if you haven't played it, consider picking it up because it's usually on sale on Steam for like $8. So
I have that game showed me a very important life lesson for me, and that is that farming games are not my jam. Because I did buy it on one of those $8 sales, as you mentioned, and I played it for about 3 hours, and I'm like, this is just not for me. So
look, it is definitely not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I think that's true of any single video game ever released. Yes. But if you have ever appreciated like a life sim or anything like that, and you haven't played Stardew yet, do yourself a favor and play a little Stardew. It's a good chill game.
The news isn't all terrible this week, aside from the Pokemon announcement, and that is this an example of developers making lemonade out of lemons that are handed to them. So Toys for Bob, the studio that made the Skylanders games, that made the most recent Crash Bandicoot, but has also been farmed out.
I believe they
the Spyro trilogy. Yeah, the remake.
Did the Spyro Reignited. Did they also do the Crash?
No, they didn't do that trilogy, but they made Crash 4. Toys for Bob did. So
okay.
But they've been farmed out. Like what they've been doing recently is being farmed out to like Call of Duty Studios to help support Call of Duty games, which sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was rumors that as part of the layoff of workers that Microsoft announced a few weeks back, that Toys for Bob was going to be closed completely, which was really upsetting for a lot of folks in the gaming space, because Toys Bob, made a lot of really good games that were just kind of like games that were more niche, but they did a really good job. Oh, actually, no, they did. Yeah, they did not do the Crash remake trilogy. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. Well, they've announced that they are taking the studio independent in the wake of these announcements, and they are exploring a possible partnership with Microsoft, a publishing partnership of sorts, but they will now be striking it out on their own. I think this is fantastic. Toys for Bob, again, is a developer that does really good work for the games that they do. And
they've been around for a long time.
They've
been around since the late 80s.
Yes.
So,
good. I hope they finally get to work on something that they actually want to work on for the first time in several years, now that they're by themselves.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, say what you will about the longevity of Skylanders or lack thereof. That was something that at least for a brief moment in time was very interesting and new.
And profitable.
And very profitable.
Yeah.
And the Spyro Reignited stuff was fucking solid. And then Crash 4, I heard pretty solid critical reception for. So I think the Call of Duty busy work notwithstanding, this is a studio that has a fairly recent track record of success. So I'm stoked that they're going to be able to resume doing things that they're actually good at and want to do.
Yep. Well, sorry to make another hard shift of gears again, but here's a great quote about Apple Arcade. One mobile developer says that the service has, quote, the smell of death, end quote, surrounding it right now. So apparently, Apple Arcade, which of course splashed onto the scene in 2019. For those who don't know, Apple Arcade is the subscription service where you pay a monthly fee to Apple, and it gives you exclusive access to, I think there's like dozens of games on there that are exclusive to Apple Arcade, that are free. Some of them have been really good. Like I found the odd really good mobile game on Apple Arcade over the years.
And then some of those that start as Apple Arcade exclusives end up being released elsewhere.
Correct,
too.
They do. Yes. But apparently now Apple has reportedly canceled, again, I'm quoting here, a shitload of projects and pissed off a lot of people following a reboot of the subscription service in 2021. Other sources, to Eurogamer, to MobileGamer.biz rather, have said that the company had steadily been cutting developer payouts and upfront fees over the recent number of years, a far cry from 2019 when they were very generous with their upfront and per play payments. I can tell you that even though I didn't know this, I can anecdotally tell you that this was happening, judging by the slate of games that are on Apple Arcade at any given time, because I do pop in there occasionally just to see if there's something that's worth checking out, or if I hear buzz about something. But really, for the last couple of years, there hasn't been anything that's gotten me to open my wallet to do that $5 subscription for a month just to check out something cool that's on there. The closest I came was that apparently Ninja Turtles game that's kind of like Hades that's on there, that I'm just kind of hoping gets released on other platforms. Apparently it's excellent. I can't remember what it's called. We talked about it on the show in passing a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, so these mobile developers are saying that they're really kind of hoping that Netflix kind of follows through and continues what they're doing, because they're starting to occupy the space that Apple Arcade originally occupied. Now, if you're counting on Netflix to fucking follow through long term on something, I would not be putting all of your eggs in that basket.
Bold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but just interesting. Because again, there's a lot of games in here. This article even mentions What the Golf, which I just rebought on Steam because it was on sale because that developer just announced a new game from them called What the Car that's coming out. So
I loved What the Golf.
What the Golf fucking rocks. Is the fucking fact of the matter.
High key one of the funniest games I've ever played.
Yeah.
Like, it's super, super fun. I played the fuck out of some What the Golf.
Yeah.
A couple years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't played What the Golf, fucking play
Please
What the
play
Golf.
What the Golf.
I'm telling
yeah.
you, it's fucking sensational. I highly recommend it. The last news story this week, and I really wish that Micah was on to react to this. But Tekken did the dirtbag move, guys. They did the dirty thing. So Namco did announce that there would be a Tekken shop in the game that would contain cosmetics and stuff like that for characters and avatar skins and the kind of stuff you expect to see microtransaction wise in games. Right. And they said that, costumes, they'd cost around like $4 a piece and this, that, or the other thing. But it wasn't in the game at launch. And therefore did not factor into any of the reviews for the game because it wasn't in the game, so they can't review it. However, the Tekken store is now in the game, Tekken shop. And of course, they've done the mobile game bullshit move of only offering currency in denominations that are greater than any one item that you can buy, therefore ensuring that if you buy a pack of currency, you will always be left with leftover money, which will then sit in your account until you say, well, I want to use that money, so let me buy more currency, and then I can buy this other thing, and then the cycle just kind of
perpetuating the cycle. Yes.
Now, here's the problem. Like, I have a problem with this in the past, or on the level. But now I have an extra problem because of what Kazushiro Harada, who's the director of Tekken, went online to answer fans complaining about this, saying that they're necessary to keep the game alive, which is fine. I'm going to quote from him directly. Okay. Development costs are now 10 times more expensive than in the 90s, and more than double or triple the cost of Tekken 7. Even the Fight Lounge servers are costly to maintain. I'm going to stop there and say, you know what? He's correct. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be microtransactions in the game. However, but he says later that the person who he was responding to probably only keeps good memories of the old games he experienced as a boy and does not pay attention to these changing times and increasing costs. The economic situation, everything else is changing. If we simply do nothing, as he suggests, the game will simply stop running in a few months. I think that is what he wants. So there's no point in talking to him about these realities. He wants us to stop economic activity and stop updating and supporting the game. Holy shit, Harada. That is a fucking 0 to 60 response that is completely missing the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
Bro, we're just mad at the fact that you're monetizing in a predatory manner. That's what you're doing. That's the problem people have. If you could let people just direct buy these costumes with a microtransaction, just, hey, pay us $4 to get this costume, I feel like people would be a little bit more accepting of it because then it's a lot easier to ignore. But no, we have to have a premium currency that you can then buy in these giant packs, and then we're going to have leftover money, and, psychologically we're going to toy with you because no one likes to see this shit. That's what people are upset about, dude. Not because they not because they want to see your game fail. They love your game.
No.
That's why they're upset about it.
Yeah. It's really completely missing the point.
Bullshit.
But, yep.
Bullshit. So, we are going to take one more break, and then we'll be back with the post office. So don't forget, if you're not a member of our Discord, you can go there and join by going to densepixels.com/fans, so you too can submit questions to us that we answer every week in a little segment called the Dense Pixels Post Office, just like Quintessential did when he said, when do you think WWE pulls the trigger on the Jade Cargill-Bianca Belair match that the world wants this year or sometime next year? Carrie, your thoughts?
I have no thoughts on this. I'm always just sitting here very politely when you and Micah get to talk about wrestling.
There's a this is an obvious money match. They know it's a money match. I would expect them to hold this for possibly a WrestleMania, maybe a SummerSlam. So I would say this SummerSlam at the earliest, more likely next WrestleMania is probably when you'll see that. T-Wash asks, what game were you sold on just because of a character from it? I bought Third Strike just because of Sean.
I can think of a couple instances. I got into Fire Emblem because I thought Marth and Roy were cool in Smash because they were in America. They were in Melee first. They were in Melee for like 2 years before they actually put a Fire Emblem game out in America. And of course, the Fire Emblem game that was released did not have Marth or Roy. We've actually, as a region of the world, we have never received an official English translation of the game that Roy is the central character of. And we've only gotten one of, well, I guess two, because they finally came around to doing like a re-release of the original NES Fire Emblem, which Marth was the main character, and I think Fire Emblems 1 through 3. But the first chance we got to actually play as Marth in a game didn't come around until like fucking 10 years after they after he appeared in Melee, when they put out Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, which fucking sucks. One of the worst Fire Emblem games they put out.
Was that the Wii one? Or the GameCube
No,
one?
it was a DS one.
Ah.
That was a DS release. Yeah.
I'm thinking of Radiant Dawn. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Radiant Dawn, Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. That's Ike is in both of those. I also, in the grand scheme of things, like, I bought Golden Sun because I thought the cover art was cool. Because I thought I thought the characters on the cover art looked cool. That was really what I got into, and I've been in hell ever since. So, but really, I would say Fire Emblem is probably like, I wanted to play Fire Emblem because Marth and Roy were cool. So
I'm flipping through my library on Steam, which is not obviously comprehensive, but I can't find a single game where I'm just like, oh, that character's in this. I gotta check this shit out. Like this is obviously something that's gonna be more applicable for like fighting games, I would imagine. But no, I'm not usually drawn in by kind of surface level stuff like that. Like for me, it's all about gameplay, and the other aesthetics around the game. It's art style, not necessarily that has to be like AAA graphics, but just looks cool. Soundtrack, things of that nature. Yeah, I'm struggling to think of an example in this case for me.
It's not true for me, but I know it's true for a lot of people where they bought Final Fantasy VII because Cloud looked cool on the cover, right? It was a big sword, unga bunga, I'm gonna play this game, right? I think that's probably pretty true for a lot of folks. Yeah. I guess in the grand scheme of things, it's not like I was ever like sold on these games to go back to T-Wash's original question, but it's like I bought these games because I thought that the characters looked cool.
Yeah.
The first game I bought with my own money was Pokemon Red because I thought Charizard looked cooler than Blastoise. Like,
now see,
then I picked Squirtle in the first place. Like,
now see, would you count like Metal Gear Acid in this? Because like, I didn't buy that game because it's Solid Snake, but I bought it because it's a Metal Gear game. So like, does that apply here, or is that?
I don't know that necessarily applies. I think like you've already basically subscribed to like the franchise at that point, right? So at least for me, and in all of these cases, it's like this was my first time getting into any of these franchises. Like I hadn't played Pokemon before, but I wanted the one with the dragon on it because I thought the dragon looked cool. Like, I hadn't played Fire Emblem before, but I thought Marth and Roy in Smash were cool. Therefore, I wanted to play the game that they were from.
Yeah.
And it unlocked a world of headaches for me. I love a turn-based tactical RPG, but there are days where it's like I'll play one and I'll be like, "Fuck, why do I like this? This sucks." Like
That's me during this
yeah.
unicorn, like trying to play this unicorn Overlord demo.
Unicorn Overlord.
Yeah. So
Um. Anyway, hope
uh
that answers your question.
Cam asks a question that seems like it's specifically for you, Carrie. Do you have a favorite Sting memory?
I like the song "Message in a Bottle."
Yeah, Leonardo responded to this with by saying when he played Fade Rotha in Dune 1984.
That was like, it's like I had to catch myself. It's like I know he's talking about the wrestler.
Yes, he's talking about the wrestler Sting.
For me, I like the Police. I like when people made fun of Sting pretty openly for talking about tantric sex. But "Message in a Bottle" is a really fun song to play on bass.
It's a good song. To answer Cam's question, so it's funny. So for me, when I got into wrestling, Sting had already transitioned to his Crow gimmick in WCW. I never got to experience Surfer Sting at the time. And the run in WC and that era of WCW, though the Crow gimmick was cool, he was poorly managed by the people holding the pen, and made to look like a fucking idiot all the time, which is unfortunate. Mm-hmm. And I certainly didn't follow TNA, and it feels weird to put anything from his short WWE run on the list, because that was kind of lackluster as well and ended in injury. And I haven't really followed when he's done AEW. So when you're asking me what my favorite memory of Sting is, I have a very limited pool to draw from, which is basically like mid 1997 to 1999. But my favorite memory actually is from a time that I've had to relive in wrestling since I didn't get to experience it live, and that is basically any time he was teaming up with Lex Luger. Because, Carrie, the one thing that Sting is famous for in professional wrestling is he has been called by many the dumbest man in professional wrestling, because he will always give partners another chance. He always teamed up with guys who were rule breakers, and he never noticed that they had like sinister intentions. He's like the all-time leader in being betrayed by a close friend in professional wrestling history, to the point where there was a match that there's a rift with Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen, and Ric Flair was like Sting's eternal rival in WCW, and he agreed to team up with Ric Flair against the Four Horsemen on a pay-per-view, and Sting like tags Ric Flair in and goes to the outside, and Ric Flair dances around the ring and gets ready to fucking go at Arn Anderson, and then turns around and fucking punches Sting right in the face. like the thing that everybody saw coming. So that's my memory is that Sting will always be the dumbest man in the history of professional wrestling.
I would say, like, it's not like I am so out of touch with wrestling that I don't know who Sting is, right?
Yes.
I was brought up in the 90s, and I had a lot of friends my age who were very into wrestling. So I would say most of my exposure to Sting was playing like the N64 games at my friend's house. Like, I think the one I can sort of remember, I guess, would have been WCW versus NWO World Tour. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say, like, I know I picked Sting pretty frequently because I thought his face paint looked cool. So that's sort of where I'm at, is, as someone who I've always been, obviously I've always had friends who are very into wrestling, and so it's always sort of been on my periphery. But yeah, most of my exposure to Sting the wrestler has been through the form of like N64 video games.
which is fair. Some could say that's the best way to experience Sting. So, Casa asks, when was the last time a game made you feel drunk with power?
Skyrim, probably. Yeah. As far as just like, just being so powerful that like you just slice down anything in your way, and it becomes a little absurd as far as like how overpowered the player character becomes. Probably Skyrim,
Yeah.
where it's just like you just stop fearing death at a point in that game, where it's like you have so many shouts, you have so many powers, you have so many overpowered weapons and all that stuff. It's just like you're just a god in that game. Whereas, I think other games that certainly give you a lot of power, but like you can still get your ass kicked. Like Spider-Man for like PS5, those games are really fun to play. And I would say there are times where I feel a little drunk with power in those games. But then I'll get my ass beat by some new form of enemy, and I'll just be like, oh, I'm not invincible.
I think for me, probably the last one I can think of is Ghost of Tsushima, because when you get leveled up in that game, regular enemies just become something that you can style on pretty easily. Like when you get all your skills unlocked and shit like that, and you kind of get proficient with sword fighting, you can literally just like walk in the front door of an enemy encampment, easily like fucking combo four and behead like four of their guys, and then like literally watch all of the rest of the people like run away from you scared, because they're just like, holy shit, this guy's gonna fucking murder us. And then getting to chase them down with your arsenal of toys. Ghost of Tsushima might be the best Batman game that exists out there.
Nice.
In all honesty. So let's see here. Leonardo was not asking this to us, but I'll ask it anyway. Thoughts on the new Dune? Haven't seen it yet. I really want to.
I haven't seen. Yeah, I guess Dune 2 just came out or is coming out this weekend.
It came out this past weekend.
Okay, cool. I've just been seeing a lot of shit posts about the popcorn bucket. And still haven't seen the first one. So
I really liked the first one. I thought they did a fantastic job adapting that, as I would expect from Denis Villeneuve, who is one of my favorite directors out there. So I'm expecting this to be just as good. It's gonna be really cool to watch Christopher Walken in a role where he's not like a parody of himself, because I feel like we haven't had that in a really long time.
He's not just playing a caricature of himself. Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, people are like that have watched this. Man, I really hope that they let Denis Villeneuve make Dune Messiah. And I'm here to tell you, I really hope they don't, because the fucking Dune books after the first one go really fucking crazy and weird and not great, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
With you. So,
I have not really read the Dune series. I feel like I should.
Yeah, stop. No, just read the first book and stop there. That's all you need. Yeah. That's all you need. Just stop the first one.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware that things get real weird real quick.
They do. They do. They do. Yeah, it's like I say, the first one is excellent. Big fan of that. Stop there. And just enjoy the first book for what it is. Justin says, "Oh, he's talking about Dune. He's not."
Yeah, there was just like a whole conversation about Dune happening in the post office. I think that was the actual last question.
Oh no!
So thanks very much. Thanks very much to everyone who submitted questions. Thanks to everyone who decided that they were just going to talk about Dune in the post office channel in Discord. Again, it's a very ask us anything kind of situation over at the post office. I guess I'll look forward to reporting back when I actually have the opportunity to see Dune. Other than that, I think that's about it for us this week.
Have you seen the 1984 Dune, by the way? Because I have not.
No.
But it looks
insane.
It looks insane. It's a David Lynch movie, so that tells you a lot of what you might need to know. The cast is like shocking in how many like known people.
I do know that much. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Kyle MacLachlan plays Paul Atreides in that. Patrick Stewart is in it. He plays Gurney Halleck. Fuck. Now I'm gonna pull up the cast for. 1984 Dune.
Kyle MacLachlan. You've got fucking Linda Hunt is in there.
Oh yeah, Linda Hunt is in there for like 2 seconds. So crazy. Brad Dourif is in it. Who the fuck else? Richard Jordan is in there. Jurgen Prochnow, who like you might not know him by his name, but if you see his face, you're like, oh, like I've seen that dude in a million things. Like he's that guy. He's in it.
Yeah.
Fucking Sting is like Sting the musician is in it. So like yeah, like I do need to watch this at some point because it is kind of wild the fact that this movie even exists.
Yeah.
At all.
It's I've seen a lot of clips from it. Seems like a wild time for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. The thing about you mentioned David Lynch, and it's like there's always a tweet that I have to think of whenever someone mentions David Lynch, where it's like comparing David Lynch to David Byrne from the Talking Heads, where it's like David Byrne equals like small head, big suit. David Lynch, big head, normal suit.
So yeah, so once I watch Dune Part 2, I will probably check in on that 1984 film just for the hell of it.
Well, I'm personally hoping that one of the flights I'm about to take this week will allow me to watch Dune Part 1, as I will be flying out east to perform a show this weekend. If you're in the greater Mid-Atlantic area, my band Byscore will be playing at an event in Falls Church, Virginia, called Ultranova. It's going to be a 6-act bill. There's going to be, I believe we've got food trucks. There will be a bar set up. There should be like some console and arcade games set up as well. But it's basically like a 6-hour mini VGM festival. So it'll be my band. You've got a nerdcore duo called Geek Swag coming down from Boston. And then you've got some more local folks such as Steel Samurai, Mon, and Wazdi, and then Zaku, which is a J-Fusion band from Philly. They're coming down to close it out that night. So it should be a really good time. Tickets are only $20. So if you're in the greater DC, Baltimore area and you're interested in coming out, please do. I would love to see you. So
yeah, and of course, don't forget to sign up for Dense Pixels Premium, $5 a month, $50 a year. DensePixels.com/premium to get access to the premium slate of TNP shows. And don't forget to check out the Nerdpocalypse Black and Black Cinema and look forward if you don't already subscribe to those shows as you're listening to this podcast. So that is it for us this week. We hope to have a much more pleasant week of news for you next week.
Fingers crossed.
Don't hold your breath. But yeah, until next time, thank you all for watching and listening.
See ya.
You're watching the Dense Pixels YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button while you're here and make sure you check out our weekly podcast where we discuss the latest gaming news and our impressions on what games we've been playing.